What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next I'm going to go over the third part of my CGC grading submission video. I'm going to talk about the grade estimates I've got for these, why I'm sending these books in. I hope you enjoy this video. Let's get into these books. Alright, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. So, like I said, this is the third part of this CGC submission video that I'm putting together. I have changed my hat for the third time, and so just like I said, I've changed my hats to kind of like keep track on my my videos, which one I'm actually doing there. So I've got about 75 books total that I'm sending in for this submission. I've got a couple other books that I've got coming in right now, so I might add, another one or two to this one, but this is basically, these three videos are covering this whole submission that I'm doing. So I'm going to talk about again each book, why I'm sending that book in, and my grade estimates for them. And then when I get the books back, I like to compare those grades to what CGC gives me, because that's how you really learn and how you improve your grading, is by sending in and doing that comparison and seeing maybe if you missed something or if you're right on. So let's get into these books. So the first one here, I'm in my largely Golden Age books here, but I've got some Silver Age ones in here too. Some books that I put in slightly larger bags, the Golden Age bags, because they're a little thicker. I like to put these ones in the Golden Age bags. This one is Marvel Superheroes number 12. And this is the first appearance of Captain Marvel, not the Carol Danvers Captain Marvel, but the first iteration of Captain Marvel. And this one I have it as a 7.0, but I have it potentially as a 9.2 to a 9.4. So it's a little weird, but there's this rippling on the cover there, and it's tough to tell, but it almost looks like some of the, I don't know if it was ink from one of the other books that was on top of it, or if it's something that bled through from the interior, but I'm not quite sure how they're going to hit that. I am going to get it pressed first, so that should handle the rippling. But it was one where at a 7.0, it's not really worth sending in. This book doesn't command much value until you get to the higher grades. For whatever reason, there are quite a few high grade copies of this book out there. But I felt like it was worth the gamble to see what it could get depending on how this gets improved. Because, I mean, check this book out. This thing is stunning. I mean, it's unfortunate that it has that flaw to it, but I felt like this was worth the gamble because, man, this book is clean. It is a really, really nice copy. And so, like I said, I've got it at a 7.0 with what's going on there, and where I'm not quite sure if it can be fixed or not, or how they're going to hit it. If they're going to treat it as a stain, then I'm screwed. And that's where I've got it at the 7.0. If they end up treating what's going on there as a stain, I don't think I can get much outside of that. But if they don't treat that as a stain, then, like I said, 9.2, 9.4, and this is just an incredible book. But regardless, it's going to be a beautiful presenting copy of this book. Now, the next one is just one issue later, and this is the first appearance of Carol Danvers. This is Marvel Superheroes number 13. For whatever reason, Marvel Superheroes 12 has a ton of high-grade copies that are out there. Marvel Superheroes 13, for whatever reason, it is very difficult to get this book in high grade. I don't know if it's because of the red or whatever, but it's not just because it's square bound, because issue 12, lots of high grade copies. Check the census, But this one, issue 13, it gets really expensive as you get up into the 8s and the 9s, because they just don't exist. And this one is very similar to that book. I got these from the same seller. They are very similar conditions, but this one does not have that rippling, bleed through or whatever it is flaw. So I have this book as an 8.5, and I could potentially see it getting higher, but it's tough to see here, but there's a little damage up in this corner up here. But man, just like that other one, such a clean copy of this book. There's a tiny little pinhole there where the staple, because the covers are glued on and then they're stapled on the interior, so that's really common with these. But yeah, super clean. It's got just a little bit, see it down there, of wear blunting in that corner there. That is the the main flaw on this book. It's this corner down here, and then this corner up here. Otherwise, I mean, it's just almost a perfect book, other than those two little flaws. So I have this one at an 8.5. I have previously owned a 9.0. I felt like this one was pretty comparable to that 9.0 book. I've owned an 8 and I've owned a 9. This book is nicer than the 8. Felt like it was comparable to the 9. I think it could potentially do better than the 8.5, but I've got it as an 8.5 right now. And I mean, yeah, I'm pretty excited for this book. It's so hard to find that book in nice condition that I'm looking forward to seeing how that one ends up grading. All right. Next two books here are from the same run, and just some cool pre-code horror skull covers. And the first one is Mysterious Adventures number 10, and I have this one as a 4 to a 4.5. It's a really nice presenting copy, but it's just got, it's got a little bit of wear on the top edge there. It's got some spine wear, a little bit of creasing here. I think it's probably going to be closer to the 4 side of things, but it's just like the center part of the cover is super clean. It's just when you go to those edges, you definitely get some wear on this book. But just a really cool skull cover. This run, Mysterious Adventures, if you're interested in getting into pre-code horror and you like skull covers, this is a great run. There's a ton of skull covers in this run. Then the other one, again, speaking of skull covers, I've got Mysterious Adventures number 20. And this one I have as a 4.0. And again, just some general wear. I don't remember if there's something going on in the back here. It's been a little bit since I've looked at this book, but a cool cover. You know, you've got these guys are going to electrocute that guy. The electrocution chair covers often are one of the niche collectible areas for pre-code horror. And then you've also got the skulls on there, the skeletons. That's something I've talked about. When you've got multiple elements that are in demand for pre-code horror type covers, it adds to the value. So with this one, you've got the skeleton skull covers, you've got electrocution, and then this one you've got the skeletons and skulls, and you've got kind of like the good girl art, woman in the red dress type covers. So that's the type of thing you want to look for when you're looking at these pre-code horror books. It comes down mostly to cover content. And so if you can get covers that have multiple elements on there that people are looking for, it generally means that it's going to be a more valuable book. Next book here is from a run that I've talked about quite a bit, and I thought this would be a good book to get graded. This run keeps getting more and more popular. This is Punch Comics number 10. And it's got this guy who's in this a lot. He's basically like an early iteration of Cyclops. He's got this eye that kind of like melts stuff and also apparently chokes people. I don't know what's going on, but his eye has all these different powers to it. But I have this one at a 4.5. It looks really nice, especially because the white cover hides a lot. But it has some general spine wear to it. It's got a little bit. You can see that staining up there. But it's just got some general spine wear to it. Little creasing here and there. But overall, a pretty nice presenting copy of this book. Punch Comics is a pretty early run. I believe this is 1945. This is from a publisher called Chesler. And so if you hear people talk about Chesler books, Punch Comics is one of those Chesler books. But yeah, I've got this one at a 4.5. It's got a couple, I've talked about these before, a couple big printer creases right here. But printer creases do not affect grade. I'll keep saying that in all these videos whenever I see them, just to kind of remind people that if you're looking at books, you see printer creases, yeah, they affect the appearance of the book, but they do not affect the grade. I have seen 9/8 with printer creases, so they definitely don't affect the grade. Now, moving on to another pre-code horror book. This one's a crazy cover. This is Shock Suspense Stories number 12. You've got a guy with the hypodermic needle, he's injecting drugs, all that kind of stuff. This one I have as a, I have this one as a 5.0. It is a really nice presenting copy, but the problem it has is it's got a little piece of tape on the cover, and tape on the outside cover just kills your grade. I mean, there's not a lot you can do about it. Sometimes you can get it removed, but a lot of times the process for removing tape can be worse than having the tape on there, so it's not always worth it. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, it's got a little spine wear, but otherwise a really nice presenting copy of this book. So, Shock Suspense Stories, EC, EC titles, that's some of the biggest books for horror are off, or at least the most in-demand books are from EC, and this is definitely one of them from this run. So yeah, Shock Suspense Stories, number 12, got this one as a 5.0, largely because of that tape. Now this next one, I'm just sending this one in because I'm curious what it's going to grade as. There's not a lot of value to this book. It's an older book. I think it's early or mid-40s. I think it's early to mid-40s. It's really a thick book. This is Star-Studded Comics, and this is an NN. There's no number, but 128 pages. I mean, look at this thing. This thing is extremely thick. You can get it graded, though. I have seen these books in slabs, so they do have slabs that are wide enough to fit these. I have this one at a 5.0 plus. It's a super nice presenting copy of this book. It's got some, again, it's the same type of thing. It's stapled on the interior and then glued, the cover is glued on. And so it's got a couple little staple holes that are where it pushed through. It's got some, let's see if we can get it to show up or not, but it's got some waviness. I don't know if you can see it, but some waviness to the cover that I'm hoping can be improved with pressing. But I mean, for pressing, especially with a really thick square bound book with this, I feel like that's going to be tough. But I mean, the thing that I was really impressed with is, I mean, look at that spine. It's actually really nice. Really no splitting on the spine for a book from the 40s. Yeah, I thought it was worthwhile to send in just to kind of see how it graded. And so that was the main reason I decided I'm going to send this one in. I was curious if it might maybe get above a 5.0, but I think that the spine, just kind of some general dirtiness and wear along the spine might hold it back. But it's a clean copy otherwise. I mean, this is one where I'm not sure how much pressing can help it. I'm hoping it can, and then maybe it gets a nicer grade, but I just thought it was a fun book to send in, especially with how thick that book is. The next book is one of the other really big books in this submission. This one is Startling Comics number 20. This one has a lot going on the cover. You've got this, like the good girl cover. You've got like the snake bondage type cover, the snake wrapped around her. I don't know how often that happens, but then you've also got the hooded Nazi villain cover. You've got this character called Pyro Man that's on the front here. This is a pretty nice condition copy. This is a expensive book. Like I said, when you get to these earlier Startling comics, especially when you've got Nazi themes on the front, I mean, they get pricey. And I've got this one at a 3.5. The main issue is at the staple. And so at the staple here, you've got some tears at the staple. And from what I've seen with my prior submissions, I was hitting those staple tears really hard, but CGC wasn't hitting them quite as hard as I was. And so I've got it at a 3.5. It is attached. It's got a pretty strong dust shadow along the edge there. But, I mean, otherwise, it's got a little corner crease down here. But otherwise, it's a pretty nice presenting copy of this book. I mean, this is earlier 40s and just some great cover content for that time period. And so I got this one at 3.5. We'll see what it comes back as. This is one that I'm pretty excited about that book. It's a rare book, and it's got some crazy Golden Age cover content. Now, one of the books that I showed recently in an unboxing was a graded copy of Strange Worlds number 4, which is just awesome Wally Wood cover. This is Strange Worlds number 5, which is also an awesome Wally Wood cover. Great like sci-fi cover, good girl art cover, and I love the blue background on this one. I think the color scheme on this book is awesome. This one I have as a 3.0. It's got a lot of wear along that spine. All these little, I don't know what causes that, where you get all these little tiny creases along there. I don't know what would actually cause that. It's got a little chip down in the corner. and you've got some wear along that other edge. The thing that's nice about this one, despite it being a relatively low-grade copy, is that the image on the interior doesn't have any creases on it. It's got a nice presenting main image for this book, but this is one that will also likely end up being a keeper book for me. I'll probably try to upgrade it later, if I can get a nicer copy, but this book is getting pretty expensive now. It's probably the number 2 cover from the Strange Worlds run. I think number 1 cover is issue 4, then this one. Then I think issue 8 is this robot cover. That's probably the number 3 cover. But I just think it's such a cool cover. And so, like I said, I've got this one at a 3.0. Excited for that one. I love the pre-code sci-fi stuff. And so I'm excited to see that one come back. Now, next book here. This is I feel like a relatively uncommon type of book. This is a Superman Good Girl art cover, and so this is Superman number 63, and it is a really nice presenting copy. The colors really pop on this book. It's got a little bit of mouse chew up in the corner here. Unfortunately, the main flaw on this book is there's a crease. I think it's kind of like this. I don't remember if it's the full length or if it's angled, but there's a crease on the back cover of this book. And so I've got this one at a 5.0, but still a 5.0 is a pretty nice copy of this book. It's Golden Age, 1950, and just in general, you've got some color rub up here, but spine is really pretty nice. And if it didn't have, gosh, it's like stupid mice, chewing on this stuff. But that's really not the limiting flaw. Might as well show it. I think the limiting flaw is the crease on the back cover. So, yeah, it is full length. It's pretty light, but still. So there's the back cover, which, man, that yellow just pops too. But let's see if I can get it to show up. You can see it here. See that crease that's going along the gun? It goes from the top all the way to the bottom. It's like an angled crease, but it's, let's see if I can get it to show up in the light any better. Probably not. Oh well. Yeah, there we go, maybe. But yeah, it's a full length crease on the book. It's unfortunate that it's there, because man, it's just, for 1950, such a nice copy of this book. But yeah, that's why I always talk about that. You have to always check the back of the books, and that was something that was disclosed to me. So that's not something like I'm concerned about that with this one, but a lot of times, there's a lot of sellers that don't. That they don't look at the back of the book. They will grade exclusively from the front through the bag because they're in a rush or whatever, and then it ends up being put on the buyer to have to check the books, and I don't think that's how it should be. It should be the responsibility of the seller to be aware of what the grade is for the book when they're selling that book. So, yeah, Superman 63 got his 5.0. I think it's just, like I said, I think it's cool because it's like a Good Girl art Superman cover, which just, there are not many of those that are out there. I can't think of, maybe someone can mention one in the comments, but I can't really think of another Good Girl art Superman cover. All right, now the next 4 books here. These are all Tales from the Crypt books. So I've got quite a few pre-code horror books that are part of this submission. The first one here is Tales from the Crypt number 23. This is early on in the Tales from the Crypt run. Remember, if it starts at issue 20 or 21. I think it starts at issue 21 when it changes the name to Tales from the Crypt. So I've got this one at a 4.0. Again, it is a nice presenting copy, but it's got, just like that other book, it's got a piece of tape right there. And also a piece of tape up here. So it's got a couple pieces of tape on the cover, and tape just ends up being a very significant limiting flaw on a book. CGC just, it hammers you for tape. And, but yeah, otherwise, this is a super nice presenting copy of this book. This book is often in very low condition. These early Tales from the Crypt ones are really low condition. It's an Al Feldstein cover, and that's actually something that a lot of people say Feldstein, and I think that ended up bothering him for a while, because if you look at later covers that he did, the way he did his signature is he wrote Feld and then drew like a beer stein. So it was like telling people it's Feldstein. He's like, pronounce it correctly. And so I thought that was so cool. I need to find one of those covers that he did like that, where he actually drew the Stein on there, because I think that's such a cool way to do the signature. But yeah, super cool book, Tales from the Crypt, number 23. So I've got that one as a 4.0. Then I've got actually another pre-code horror like key book. This is Tales from the Crypt, number 33. This is the origin of the Crypt Keeper, I believe, is what this one is. And so I have this book as a 4.0 as well. But this one, it's just general wear. It's a nice presenting copy. But let me see, what was the... I can't remember what the main reason. I think it was just mostly spine wear. So it could maybe do a little bit better. It's got a little bit of rusting on staples, but if you've seen my other videos, staple rust really doesn't hurt your grade as much as a lot of people think it does. I've seen some high grades of staple rust. It's a little easier. There we go. So you can see all these little kind of like creases on the spine. But in general, a really nice presenting copy of this one. I think, yeah, I don't know. I'm sticking with my 4.0. Could it do a little nicer? Maybe. I don't remember what's on the back cover now. I don't want to just front cover grade the book when I was just talking about that. So, but when I graded it as a 4.0. So, but yeah, I think this is a cool cover. This is a Jack Davis cover. I think Jack Davis does some of the best covers. His detail that he puts on these books, on the covers, they separate themselves out from everybody else. His covers have so much detail. They look great. I've got, let's see, 2 other Jack Davis covers coming up, and you can see it in those covers how nice they look. First one is Tales from the Crypt number 39, also a Jack Davis cover. You got this creepy mutant or werewolf type guy chasing these kids through a cemetery. I think it's such a cool cover. I have this one as a 4 to a 4.5. It's actually pretty nice, except it's got this tear up at the top here. A little bit of general wear, but it's a pretty clean copy of this book. These are all they're pretty nice presenting copies. But they have just a combination of other flaws that are going to end up hurting them. I believe this one has a little bit of tanning too. There might have been a piece out of the back cover. I can't remember, but yeah. Tales from Crypt 39, 4 to a 4.5. Cool Jack Davis cover. Now, it's not my favorite cover from this run. Yeah, it's not my favorite cover from Tales from the Crypt is 28. It's this like buried alive cover. This is probably number 2. This is Tales from the Crypt number 46. This is a tougher book to get because this is the last book of the run, so it had a lower print count. And this one, I mean, it is a very nice presenting copy. Unfortunately, it has quite a bit of spine wear. So I have this one as a 4.0, but I don't know if it will come through here. Yeah, so you can see all that spine wear there. Now, luckily, the staple, at least this top staple is offset. The top staple is offset. Bottom staple is slightly offset. So I don't think I think it'll have a pretty good chance of surviving pressing and CGC and all of that. But I think my presser, I've always been super happy with his work, and he deals with Golden Age books quite a bit, and he says like it's basically like it's a balancing act with Golden Age books. Like, do you press it another time, or how hard do you press that book versus the risk of adding damage to the book? So I'm more worried about CGC. CGC has been really rough on some of my books, and when you've got spines that just seem like they aren't super strong, there's just a chance that they're gonna damage them. But I love this cover. I love this depiction of the werewolf. It reminds me of the werewolf from Harry Potter and Prisoner of Azkaban. I like the kind of like the tall, lanky type werewolf. I think it looks really cool. But this book is usually very beat up, and even if it gets a lower grade because of the spine, this is going to be a really, really nice presenting copy of this book. So those are the 4 Tales from the Crypt books I'm sending in. I was thinking of sending in 28. I have a copy of 28, but I ended up deciding against it. I didn't think... I didn't think the value was there, and so with what I spent on it versus what grading is and all that kind of stuff. So I may change my mind before I ultimately do the submission, but for right now, I don't have that one in the submission. All right, now I've got an LB Cole book here. This one is Terrifying Tales number 15. It's a good girl art cover. You got the alligator on there. This one I have as a 4.5. It's a really nice presenting copy. It's got a couple things going on. It's got that crease up there, a little bit of wear down in the corner here. But the main issues with this book is that someone did quite a bit of tracing on it. I don't know if it'll come out in the video or not. But they traced around the alligator, they traced around the girl. They did a good job. I mean, it's right on where the lines are, but you can kind of see it down on her leg there. But basically everything is traced, and so it needs to be pressed to try to get rid of that as much as possible. It's got some spine wear, that kind of thing. I mean, could it maybe hit a 5? Yeah, I think it's possible. It is a really nice presenting book with spine wear like that. 5s, maybe 5.5s are kind of what I've seen. I wasn't quite sure how much of that tracing, that indentation could really get out. It's not like someone drew on the cover. It's what people, like kids would do, is they would put paper over it and then they would draw along the things on the cover to practice drawing. And so that's what was done here. And so you've got these indentations kind of like all over the cover here, but still a pretty nice presenting copy of this LB Cole book. Now I've got, here's in my, I think the first video I did, I had a Matt Baker Western book, and here I've got another Matt Baker Western book. This is The Texan, number 13, and this has a very similar kind of like sunrise or whatever type cover where I really like the looks of those. He has a number of covers where he draws Native Americans, and again, it's one of those genres that I think has the potential to become more popular because of the artist, because of Matt Baker. Now, I have this book as a 4.5 to a 5. It's a pretty nice presenting copy. It's got this crease up here, unfortunately, but otherwise a really clean looking copy of this book. And it's one of those books I got for cheap enough that I felt like it was worthwhile to send in to see what that grade comes back as. And yeah, I mean, spine is even actually pretty nice. It's got a little spine wear up at this staple up here, but otherwise a really nice presenting copy of this one. And you don't come across clean copies of these books very often. Right, next one. This is one that I showed in one of the grading videos as well. I think this is just such a cool pre-code horror cover. This is Uncanny Tales number 1. And I have this one as a 5.0. It is a pretty clean copy. It's got some general wear around the book. You've got a little bit of spine wear. You've got some creasing along the spine. But it's got some cool cover content. You've got these like space worm alien things coming in. I think they're like maybe raising the dead, like in going into the bodies and taking over. But you've got kind of like the good girl art but skeleton cover, and I've talked about that. You've got the multiple elements on this cover, and you can see that see how you get like the different reflectivity with the different layers on this book. Like this is a nice presenting copy of this book. And so, like I said, I've got this one at a 5.0. It's a cool Atlas book, Uncanny Tales number 1. I like those Atlas horror books. I think they're undervalued right now, and I can see with all the other horror books going up in price that people eventually moving over to Atlas, because Atlas has some really great covers and titles. All right. Now, this is one that it may be a wash sending this book in. I don't know. This is an EC book, but this is a post-code EC book. This is when you had the Comics Code Authority, and then EC had to change like the titles that they were, the content that they were doing, and they didn't do very well, and they went out of business very quickly. This is Valor Comics number 3. This is when they're doing kind of like, I think it's like conquistador type stories. I have this book at a 6.5. It's just got, I'm a little worried about the staples. They're kind of like pushed in a little bit, but they're still attached. But these books, these EC postcode books, can be pretty tough to get in high grade. And I think or even decent condition, because I think people just didn't like them very much, and so they didn't take care of them very much. But it's a pretty clean copy of this one, which is why I'm sending this one in. I just felt like at a 6.5, if you can get that type of grade, I felt like it was worth it, and so decided to send this one in. I've had it listed on eBay raw for a while with no interest, and so I figured maybe it would help it out if I got it graded. So that's why I'm sending that one in. Definitely not a keeper type book for me. All right, the next three. Got a lot of EC books in this submission. This is from the Vault of Horror run. EC has there's just a bunch of great horror runs. First book here, this is a big one from that run. This is Vault of Horror number 12. This is actually the first issue from the run. This is like Vault of Horror number 1. It changed its name to Vault of Horror at this issue. And so I have this book as a 1 to a 1.5. And now it presents really, really well, but the spine is, if I remember correctly, it's not completely split, but it is detached, and it's split all the way up to here. So like this is all split, and then it's got a little bit up here that's connected. But this is another one that I am not planning to send to get pressed, because I'm worried about handling on this book. I want as little handling on it as possible. I don't think pressing is going to make it any better. It presents nicely, and it has some major flaws, and so pressing isn't really going to improve the book. So I've got it as a 1 to a 1.5. It's a super nice presenting 1 to 1.5. This one can be pretty pricey, even in those grades. I paid, I think, around $700. If it gets the grade, I think it will. I think it's still over $1,000 book. So yeah, pretty excited about this one. Then I've got a high grade copy of Vault of Horror number 29. This one is a Johnny Craig cover, and it's got kind of like these zombie skeleton type things just harassing this guy. And so this one I have as a 6.5 to a 7. I mean, it's really nice. It's got a little bit of spine wear, so you can see got a little bit of spine wear here, but otherwise super clean copy of this book. You've got a tiny crease. You've got, it's not even like this isn't a crease here. This is part of the art. You've got a tiny little one there, but otherwise just a really, really nice copy of this book. And so that's why I decided this one was worth sending in. I felt like it was a pretty high grade copy. Like I said, 6.5 to a 7. So we'll see what this one comes back as. The next one, I'm sending this one in because this is my favorite cover from the run. I think this is one of the, it's just the craziest cover content. And that's one of the things that is just really big with the pre-code horror type books. It's how crazy is that cover content. And to me, it doesn't get much bigger than this one. This is Vault of Horror number 35. And so this is also a Johnny Craig cover. And you've got this guy that's got an axe that he's going to take to his wife, and he's given her a coffin for Christmas. And it says, "Merry Christmas to my wife." I mean, it's crazy. This is just ridiculous cover content, over the top. And so this is a lower grade copy. I have this one as a 2 to a 2.5. There's a lot of spine damage. It's detached at the bottom staple. It's attached at the top staple. I'm going to risk getting this one pressed. I want this one to look as nice as possible. I really want to get that in the 2s, that 2 to the 2.5 range with this one. But I think this is the best cover to me from this entire run. It's one of the better EC covers overall. I just think it's just crazy. And so Vault of Horror number 35, Johnny Craig, this ridiculous Christmas cover. But yeah, 2 to a 2.5 for that one. So those are the 3 Vault of Horror books that I am sending in. Now, next one here, I had a few books from Walt Disney's Comics and Stories that I was considering sending in. This is the only one that I ultimately decided to send in because the other ones were such low grade. I'm selling them, but I'm selling those books raw. This one I felt was worthwhile to get graded This is Walt Disney's Comics and Stories number 20. And it's just an awesome Donald Duck cover. It's a World War II cover. He's selling war bonds. I mean, the main issue is the spine. I mean, you've got these little, kind of like some creases and some bends, that kind of thing along the spine. It is attached at both staples. The bottom staple isn't as good as the top staple. The top staple is great. Bottom staple has a little extra stuff going on. But in general, just a pretty nice presenting copy of this book. I mean, for this solid red cover, to not have any real big creases or anything on the front, it's a nice looking copy. I have this one at a 4 to a 4.5, and I thought this book deserved to be graded. I thought it looked so nice. Needs to be pressed. It's got, like some of that dimpling, that kind of stuff on the cover. It'll improve it a little bit. There's color breaks here and there, you can't do anything about those, but I like the Walt Disney's Comics and Stories World War II type covers, the war bonds covers, and this is one of those. And if you're ever wondering with numbering on these, sometimes they have the actual number up on the cover, but this one does not. And so what they do is they have volumes, and each volume was 12 issues. And so volume 1 would have been 12 issues, and then this is volume 2, issue 8. So you do 12 plus 8, and that's how you get issue 20. So this is Walt Disney's Comics and Stories, issue 20. 3 more EC books. Some sci-fi ones this time, though. I really like the EC sci-fi books, too. First one here is Weird Fantasy number 8. And I have this one at a 3.5 to a 4. It's got kind of, I think this is a dust shadow. I think this is from a book being stacked like, you can see this other book now. A book being stacked like this here. And so then you ended up with that line there on this one. And so I think that's how it got, it got that on the cover. But I have, like I said, I have this one as a 3.5 to a 4. Just a cool sci-fi cover. You've got these aliens that looks like they've abducted these people. They've got them in tubes. When I posted one of my other books, someone put hashtag like women in tubes. It's weird. Like that, there are a number of pre-code covers that have people in tubes, but this is one of them. Another Al Feldstein cover, but just in general, pretty nice presenting copy. It just has some general wear to it. So I've got it as 3.5 to a 4. Then I've got Weird Fantasy number 13, which you already saw. I also have this one as a 3.5 to a 4. I just think it's an awesome Red Planet cover. I think this one, again, it's got some general wear to it. I think there was some stuff maybe going on the back with this one. I don't remember exactly, though. That was also it. There's a little chipping on the edge here. But overall, pretty nice presenting copy of this book. And just, man, that planet really pops on this cover. I think it's an awesome looking cover. Colors really pop. Just a cool sci-fi book. And then the last one here, this is actually one of the bigger books from the Weird Fantasy run. I don't know if it's the most expensive one, but it's close. This is Weird Fantasy number 18, and I think this is the first Ray Bradbury adaptation of a story that they did in the Weird Fantasy title. And so this one, obviously it's low grade, but it still holds a lot of value regardless. I have this one as a 1.8, and the bottom 3/4 of the book actually looks pretty nice, but the top just has a lot of color rub and color lift on it. Yeah, it's attachable staples. There's a little rust at the staples, that kind of thing. But the important image, the cool image here, looks really nice. There's a little staining here, that kind of thing. But I mean, it's a low grade copy. I have it as a 1.8, but this, like I said, this is a pretty expensive book regardless of condition, and that's why I decided that this one was still worthwhile to send in. So those are the those are the 3 sci-fi books. Weird Fantasy, again from EC. EC, they were just killing it back in the golden age. They had a ton of awesome titles, incredible covers. Just they had a lot going for them. The Comics Code Authority they killed them. It's too bad, but that's why we have these awesome books we get to talk about now. Now, the last book in this box, and I've got 2 more that I've got on the table here because they're magazine size, and so I don't have them in that box. This is Wonder Comics number 16. Now, this is a nice copy. I have this one at a 7.5 to an 8. I mean, and I honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if it did better than that. I mean, it is such a nice copy of this book. Now, I talked about this one when I did the unboxing video because it threw me off a little bit at first. So you can see, like, just almost no spine wear. There's a couple little spine ticks. Now, this one is a Schomburg cover. It says Zella there. So when he did a lot of these airbrush covers, he signed his name Alex backwards, which is Xela. And so this is an Alex Schomburg airbrush cover, cool good girl art type cover. The dude bondage in the back there. But the thing that really threw me off on this book was this bottom edge. I was worried at first. I was like, is this trimmed or something? But then I've learned that I did kind of some research on it. I looked up tons of copies of this book, and I found other examples that had this with blue labels. Actually, some that were worse than this, where it had this trimmed on the bottom and on the top. And it's not that it's trimmed; it's just that this publisher wasn't awesome with their quality control, and so the covers often just weren't cut the same size as the interior pages. And the other thing that really, to me, made me think everything was okay with this book when I got it is that there's a small stain on the back cover, and it runs from the back cover onto the paper. And so usually if you were going to trim an edge, it would have been done because you wanted to keep that book looking really nice, and you likely wouldn't have spilled something on it then. And so I felt like because that small stain ran from the actual cover to the paper on the back, that it was probably not trimmed. And finding those other examples of it, I was pretty confident that it's not. But front cover, if it was just the front cover, I mean, I could see this book getting a 9. You know, I mean, it's really, really nice. I mean, just a few little spine ticks. The only reason I'm holding it back to the 758 is that stain that's on the back cover. Now, I did have a book from one of these other airbrush, it was like Startling Comics 48, I think. And I had, I believe, it was either an 8.0 or an 8.5. And it did have a small stain on the front cover. And so that's why I think it could potentially do better than that 7.5 or 8, but I feel like I'm being a little conservative on it, which is, it's crazy for me to say with a Golden Age book. It feels weird giving Golden Age books grades up in the 7s and the 8s, but I mean, it's a stunning copy, and especially when I took it out of the bag, I mean, it's even more impressive out of the bag. So I've got it at a 7.58. I'll be really disappointed if it doesn't hit that, if the stain ends up knocking it down more than that. But I wouldn't be surprised if it did better too. But 7.5 to an 8, awesome copy of Wonder Comics number 16. Just incredible Alex Schomburg airbrush covers. All right, so now I've got these last two books. These are both magazine size books, and I have actually 4 copies of this book. I've decided I'm going to send in 2 of them. And it's just because magazines, they're more expensive to get graded. They take forever to get graded. There's more complications with it. And so I haven't decided if I want to do walkthrough with them just to get them back quicker or what. I don't know if I want to spend like $200 to get the book graded or $150 or whatever it is for walkthrough. But these are both Vampirella number 1. This is a Frank Frazetta cover. It is the first appearance of Vampirella. It is a book that I've talked about because it has just been going straight up. This book has been on a constant trend up for like 2 years, and it's just, I mean, Frank Frazetta covers are super popular. Vampirella is super popular, and it's an awesome cover. It's a great combination. Now, I haven't decided what I'm going to do with these books after I send them in. One I'm going to keep as kind of like my keeper copy. The other one I'm going to sell. I'm going to sell the other 2. I'm just not going to send those in to get graded. I said I didn't want to get those ones graded just because of the expense. But this one is the nicer of the 2. I have this one as a 7.0, but I've struggled with I've struggled with magazine grading. I've found that I feel like I look at some of these that are out there and I'm just like, that book looks really nice and it gets a bad grade, and I don't know if I'm missing something or what, but I've been trying to grade it the same way as I grade comics. And what I thought I had seen, because I've had these Famous Monsters of Filmland books that are magazine sized, and it generally seemed like they actually allowed a few more flaws per grade. I think just maybe because it's like a larger book or something. But then with Vampirella, they seem to grade this book really, really tight. And I don't know if it's like color rub they're hitting it for or what, but this one I have as a 7.0. It's got just a few little spine ticks on it. You know, you can count the spine ticks on this one. It's got a little wear on the bottom edge, and then it's got this small like reader bend here, like from a thumb. And the other thing it's got that I'm not sure how it's going to hit it is I think this is manufacturing. It's almost like a roller mark, like something from the printer that's right here. But that I'm not quite sure how that's going to hit this book. But I mean, this is definitely the nicest presenting copy that I have of my 4 copies. So I've got this one at a 7.0. This wasn't a very cheap book, so I hope it gets to the 7.0, but we'll see. I mean, it has gone up quite a bit even since I bought this one, and so I'm probably okay even if it gets a little lower. But yeah, got this book as a 7.0. It's got an all red back cover that shows everything. Gets a lot of color rub, so that's one of the other things that can really hurt this book. Now, the reason, even though I think this one is nicer than the other one, that I'm not sure which one I want to keep, is that the other one has a really cool feature to it. This one I have as a 5.5 to a 6, but it's got this awesome date stamp on it. You know, and I think that adds a lot to this book. This is the only one that I have one of these magazine-sized top loaders, so I keep this one in the top loader. But you can see, I mean, it's got a little more color rub. This one, you can see that color rub along the spine there. But the spine is relatively clean. Bottom edge is pretty clean. It's got this tiny crease here. If I remember correctly, on this copy, the back cover has, again, a little more color rub to it. And so that's why I hit the grade on this one a little harder. But like I said, I am not confident on magazine grading. I have never submitted a magazine for grading before. It's just what I've seen with other magazines that I have, whether it's actual magazines like those Famous Monsters of Filmland or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles books, which are like the magazine size books. But it's just, magazines are not something I've ever really dealt with on the grading side. And so we'll see how these ones come back. But like I said, I've got this one, you know, as the 7.0, this one has the 5.5 to a 6. And I think I'm generally okay with both of them regardless, just because I got them. I mean, the 701 was expensive. I think I paid around $1,200 or something for that. But this book has just gotten so pricey regardless that, you know, we'll see how it turns out. But yeah, I'm excited to send those ones in. Hopefully get one that comes back, you know, and I hope that one comes back in the 7s. We'll see, but just that date stamp is such a huge plus with that book. I think it just looks so cool. But this was the 3rd video for this submission. I've covered all the books that I'm sending in, you know, why I'm sending those in, whether it's a key or just because it's a higher grade copy that I think you can get more value out of that book. I have a couple other books, like I've said, that are coming in, and so maybe I might have something else that'll add to the submission. But for the most part, this is it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've been thinking of sending some books in, maybe these are the types of things that I consider. It's the price of the book that I have into it, how much it costs to get it pressed and cleaned and then graded, and then at the end, the overall value of that book. Because if you could go out and buy a graded book for less than what you're going to spend total for what you bought for the raw book plus the grading, might as well just go buy the graded book. Then you don't have any risk with sending it in to get graded, whether you don't get the grade you want, it gets damaged in transit, it gets damaged by CGC, anything like that can happen. And so that's really what you want to think about when you're thinking about sending these books in for grading. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to watch some of my other videos, and the subscription button right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.